Probably the most common short game shot you'll need to hit is the bump and run. It's the traditional greenside chip shot, which I feel is one of the easiest shots in golf. And that's what we're going to cover in today's lesson. We're going to show you how to get those close enough for a nice one putt. So in today's lesson, we're going to discuss a bump and run. It's your typical greenside chip shot. And the reason we call it a bump and run is that is exactly what we do. We simply bump this ball onto the putting surface and we let it run. So we're in a situation here where we can't putt it. There's a reason why we have to chip it, whether you got a divot in your line, maybe you're going into the grain a little bit, or you're a little bit in the rough like I am here. So we've chosen to take a wedge. All we need is a little bit of loft, enough to get it on the green and let it run. So typically this shot is going to require about 1/3 carry, 2/3 roll, 1/4 carry, 3/4 roll, whatever. It's a little bit less carry than it is roll. So first thing we need to do is we need to read the green. Just like this were a putt, if we were putting, say from here, we would put a little bit of pressure on ourselves to get this really, really close or even try to make it. Well, I want you to start thinking the same thing about a chip shot. This is why I think it's such an easy shot, because most people don't put enough pressure on themselves. They feel like they have to make it. So it's like, okay, we just want to get it up there and get it close, and that's actually very easy to do. So we're going to read this putt, and we're going to see it's a little bit uphill here. It's maybe going to break a little bit to the right, so we're reading it just as if we were putting. The next thing we need to do after we read the putt is pick our landing spot, and that requires a little bit of experimentation. Also depends on what club you're going to use. If I'm going to use a wedge like I've got here, I'm going to fly it a little bit further, planning on some backspin, not as much topspin, and then it's going to release and roll. If, however, I have more like a 7-iron or a 5-iron, I know I can knock that ball down a little bit quicker on the green, and it's going to take off really, really hot with a lot of forward spin. So you can use every single club in your bag to hit this shot. You can hit it with a driver. I've seen a lot of players use hybrids and 5-woods, but that's a lot of clubs. So what I recommend for my students is pick a shorter club for shorter shots, maybe a wedge, and maybe a 7-iron, 8-iron, something like that for longer shots where you want a lot of roll. That way you've got your go-to clubs. When you're under the gun and you're under pressure, you're going to be able to fall back on those two clubs and know what they do because you've practiced them so much. If you've got hours and hours to practice during the day, you want to experiment with all 14 clubs, I think that's great too. It's only going to teach you skill and it's going to help develop your game. So my goal here, knock the ball on the green, keep it low, let it run. I want to keep it under the wind, get it rolling. So my setup is crucial here. I'm going to choke up a little bit for control, but that also helps me knock the ball down. The next thing I'm going to do is position the ball either middle to slightly back in my stance. Notice I've got a really small stance for a bump and run. We only need to be about a club head apart. And the most important thing, I'm going to lean left and forward press my hands. So my hands are going to be at about the middle of the inside, or the middle of my front thigh rather, and my weight's about 80% on my front foot. That means my head and sternum have to come with me. We don't want to lean back and flip up. So now that I'm set up, I've got the ball back, I've got my weight forward, I'm choking down, my hands are forward. I'm simply going to lock my wrists. I've got a nice big triangle here. I'm going to move this triangle back and through like a giant pendulum. I'm going to make sure that that pendulum goes down. I've got to hit down to get that ball to pop up just a little bit. So notice there's no wrist action. Everything's coming from my shoulder, my back, my abdominals, not using my hands, but I'm going to hit down on that ball, nice firm short finish, and I'm going to let it run. So I've taken the time to read the green. I've chosen my club. I've put a hula hoop down here to represent the landing spot, which is the most important thing. Your focus has got to be on that landing spot. If it's wrong while you're practicing, just adjust it up and back. Not a big deal. This is just a guesstimate here. So I'm going to choke down, narrow stance, weight forward, hands forward, lock the wrists, use the shoulders, make sure I hit down and through. Nice, firm, low finish here. So here's how it's done. And you can see, not a bad shot, but I did fly my landing spot by a few feet, and as a result, I rolled a few feet past. It's simple and it works. If you have an idea for a lesson, please submit it in the Ask Maria section on mygolfinstructor.com.